there is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to keep and a time to let go. Good late night to you, my friend. If you are here right now, if you found your way to this quiet corner of the night when most of the world has already closed its eyes, then I want you to know that I believe you were meant to hear this particular story tonight. Not tomorrow, not some other time. Tonight, right now, in whatever room you are sitting or lying in, with whatever weight you carried through your days still sitting somewhere in your chest. I believe this story found you at exactly the right moment. I'm your friend, Arthur, and I am so glad you are here. There is something about tonight's letter that I have been thinking about since it arrived, something that I want to sit with you in before we even get to the words themselves. And that something is this: not every ending is a loss. I want to say that again, slowly, because I think it is the kind of sentence that sounds simple on the surface, but carries something much heavier underneath it, something that takes time to really settle into the body and be believed. Not every ending is a loss. Some endings are completions. Some endings are the natural, quiet, unhurried arrival at the final page of a story that was always going to end exactly here, at exactly this point. And the fact that it has reached its ending does not diminish a single word that came before it. In fact, and this is the part that I think is hardest to accept, sometimes the ending is what makes everything before it makes sense. Sometimes you cannot see the full shape of a thing until you can see all of it, beginning and middle and end, laid out in front of you in the quiet. And when you can finally see the whole shape, sometimes what you feel is not grief. Sometimes what you feel is something much softer and much more surprising than that. Sometimes what you feel is grateful. Tonight's letter comes from a woman named Mia, and Mia's letter is about a bookshop. But I want you to understand, before I read it to you, that it is not really about a bookshop at all. It is about a father. It is about 20 years of a life lived inside four walls that smelled like old paper and worn leather, and in particular, irreplaceable dust of a place that has been loved consistently for a very long time. It is about learning to hold something with open hands, and about the moment you finally, gently, with full and clear eyes, choose to let it go. If you have ever had to close a door on something that mattered to you, a job, a place, a chapter of yourself that you lived fully, and then had to walk away from, then Mia's words are going to land somewhere close to the center of you tonight. I am certain of that, because she wrote them for herself, but they belong to all of us. Before I take you to Mia's letter, I want to take just a moment to speak to you directly about this space we share. If these late night broadcasts have ever given you comfort, if you have ever lain in the dark with my voice in your ear and felt your shoulders drop just a little, felt the weight of the day become just slightly more manageable, then I want to gently ask you to consider supporting this channel with a like, a subscription, or even just a comment below telling me you were here tonight. Every single one of those small gestures matters more than you know. It tells me that this space is still needed, that the work of sitting in a quiet room and finding the right words for the right hour is still doing something real in the world. It gives me the reason to keep going, to keep showing up here night after night and building this warm place for you. So if you can, please do that, and then settle in, because we have a beautiful story to sit with tonight. Now let us go to Mia. Let us go to her shop. It is late into the night when Mia's story begins, though the story itself started 20 years ago, and perhaps even before that, in the hands of her father, who first opened the door of that small corner shop and turned the sign from closed to open and stood behind a wooden counter that he had built himself and waited for the world to come in. The world did come in, not in enormous crowds, not in the way that transforms a quiet corner shop into something famous or busy or profitable in any dramatic sense. It came in the way that the right things always come, slowly, steadily, one at a time, in the form of people who needed exactly what a small and quiet bookshop has to offer, which is not just books, but the particular piece of a room where the world outside cannot reach you for a little while. The shop sat at the corner of an old street, the kind of street that still had cobblestones in the narrow alley that ran along one side of it, the kind of street where the buildings leaned slightly toward each other at the top, as if they had been standing so long they had grown comfortable with the company. The shop window was wide and low, and in the evenings, when the lamp inside was on, the golden light that spilled out onto the pavement made the whole corner look like a scene from a painting, warm and contained, and entirely separate from the rushing world beyond it. People passing on the street would sometimes stop and look at it, not because they intended to go in, just because something in the sight of it made them slow down for a moment, made them feel for just a second that not everything was moving fast, that there were still places in the world where things were allowed to be quiet and old and unhurried. Mia grew up in that shop. Not literally. She had a home, a bedroom, a childhood outside those walls, but in the way that matters most. She grew up in that shop. She grew up knowing the sound every floorboard made. She grew up knowing which shelf held the books her father loved most, the ones he would take down and press into the hands of certain customers with the particular certainty of a man who knew what a person needed before they did. She grew up knowing the smell of the place, that very specific, layered, deeply personal smell that belongs to bookshops that have been loved for a long time, the smell of old paper going soft at the edges, of leather covers worn smooth by many hands, of dust that has settled on things and been gently disturbed and settled again over many years, of the particular mix of wood and warmth, and something else that she could never quite name, but that felt, for her entire life, exactly like the smell of being safe. When her father died, the shop became hers, not just in the legal sense, though that too. It became hers in the deeper sense, the sense that sometimes the most important things we inherit are not objects or money or property, but responsibility, the responsibility of being the keeper of something that mattered. The responsibility of continuing something that a person you loved built with their hands and their time and their belief that the world needed more quiet corners in it. She took it on. She opened the door every morning and turned the sign and stood behind the wooden counter her father had built and waited for the world to come in. And the world came in, slowly, steadily, one at a time. She did this for 20 years. The letter from Mia arrived on an ordinary night. The envelope was not fancy. The handwriting on the outside was slightly uneven, the writing of a person who had not slept, or who had been sitting in one position for too long, or who was writing from a place inside themselves where the hand does not have quite its usual steadiness. I opened it carefully, the way I always open the letters that come to me, because I have learned over time that what is inside them deserves that care, deserves to be entered into slowly and with attention. This is what Mia wrote. Arthur, I have never written to anyone like this before. I've thought about it. I've sat with the idea of writing to you for a long time, actually. And every time I sat down to do it, I thought, what would I even say? But tonight, I know what I want to say. Tonight, I think I have to say it or it will stay locked up inside me. And I'll carry it for years without ever really looking at it. So here I am. It's very late. I'm sitting in my shop. My shop. Though I suppose after tonight, I have to stop calling it that. I've been running this bookshop for almost 20 years. My father ran it before me. He built the counter I'm sitting behind right now. He put the shelves up himself with his own hands, and he used to say they were slightly crooked because he measured them by rather than with a proper level, and that the slight crookedness was intentional, because books aren't straight either. Not really. They lean and slouch and take up whatever space they need, and the shelves should do the same. I love that about him. He had a way of finding the meaning in things that other people might just fix and move on from. I locked the door tonight for the last time. I want to try to describe that moment because I don't think I will ever fully live through it again, and I want to remember it properly. I put the key in the lock, my key, the one I've used every single night for 20 years, the one that has worn smooth in the exact places where my fingers grip it, and I turned it, and the bolt slid home, and I stood there on the pavement outside with my hand, still on the key, and the warm light still on inside the shop, visible through the low, wide window, and I waited for the grief to come. I expected it. I was prepared for it. I had been preparing for it for weeks, honestly, since I made the decision, since I finally sat down and admitted to myself that the time had come. The grief didn't come, not the way I expected it to. What came instead was quieter than that. It was more like, and I don't know if this word is right, but it's the closest I can get to it. It was more like tenderness. The feeling you get when you look at something you love that is very old, something that has lived its life completely. And well, not sadness that it is old, just love, just quiet, full, specific love for the exact thing it has always been. That is what came when I turned the key. That is what I felt standing on the pavement outside my father's shop for the last time. I went back inside. I know that probably sounds strange. I had already said goodbye, I thought. I had already turned the key. But I wasn't ready to walk away from the light yet. So I let myself back in, and I sat down on the stool behind the counter. The same stool my father used to sit on when the shop was quiet. And I just sat. I sat, and I looked at the room. I want to try to describe it to you, Arthur, because it was beautiful in a way that an empty room should not be able to be beautiful. And I want someone to know that. The shop was dim. I had turned off most of the lights earlier in the evening, but I had left one lamp on. The old brass one on the counter. The one my father bought at a market before I was born. The one with the slight wobble in its base that he never got around to fixing. It threw a circle of warm gold light across the counter and the nearest shelves and made everything beyond it exist in a gentle dark that was not frightening in the slightest. It was a good dark, a full dark, the kind of dark that has company in it, because the shelves were still full. I hadn't finished packing. About half the boxes were done, stacked near the door. and the other half of the shop was still as it had always been. Books everywhere, on the shelves and in the stacks on the floor, and in the little wire stands near the window, and on the low bench at the back that my father built for people who wanted to sit and read a few pages before they decided whether to buy. The room smelled as it always smells, of old paper and worn leather, and that other thing I can never name. It smelled like him. Even now, even after all these years, it still smells like him. I ran my hand along the counter. The wood is smooth under my fingers, so smooth from so many years of hands resting on it. My father's hands and my hands, and the hands of every person who ever leaned on it while they thought about which book to buy, or while they told me something about their day, or while they waited for me to wrap their purchase in the brown paper and the string that I kept behind the counter, because my father always used brown paper and string, and I never saw a reason to change that. The grain of the wood is visible even in the low light. I traced it with my fingertip. I sat there for a long time doing exactly that. I thought about my father, not painfully. That is what surprised me most about tonight, Arthur. I have been afraid, honestly afraid, that closing this shop would open up the grief of losing him all over again, that it would feel like a second loss, like letting go of the last physical place that still held him. But it didn't feel like that. Sitting in that dimly lit room with my hand on his counter and his lamp throwing gold light across his shelves, I didn't feel like I was losing him again. I felt like I was sitting with him, like the room was full of him, like all the years he spent in it, and all the years I spent in it after him were present in the air of the place, settled into the walls and the floorboards and the slight crookedness of the shelves. He was there. He was absolutely there. And sitting with that, sitting in the warmth of it, I felt something I didn't expect to feel tonight. I felt okay. I got up at some point and walked the shelves. Just walked them, slowly, one row at a time, the way you might walk a familiar path for the last time, not rushing, not missing a single step. My fingers trailed along the spines of the books as I went. I could feel the different textures, the smooth hardcovers, and the rough cloth, and the cracked spines of the old paperbacks that had been read many times, and the stiff spines of the ones that had sat for years waiting for the right person to open them. There is a book on the third shelf from the bottom, third section on the left, that has been there since before I took over the shop. I used to watch my father look at it sometimes, take it down, hold it, put it back. I never saw him sell it. I don't think he ever wanted to sell it. I don't know the story behind it, and I never asked, and now I can't. And tonight when I got to that shelf, and my fingers found that spine, I took it down and held it the way he used to hold it, and I put it in my bag. I'm taking it home. I'm going to read it. 20 years late, but I'm going to read it. The dust rose when I moved some of the books. That faint, pale rising of dust in the lamplight that happens in old places when you disturb the still air. I watched it lift and drift and slowly settle again. It sounds like nothing, I know, but it was so quiet in the shop by then. The street outside had gone completely still, and that little drift of dust in the warm light was the most specific, private, heartbreaking, and beautiful thing I have seen in a long time. I watched it settle, and I stayed. I don't know what time it is now. Very late. I'm sitting on the stool again, at the counter, with this paper in front of me, and the lamp still burning beside me. Most of the shop is dark. The window is dark. The street outside is empty, and the light from the lamp is throwing my shadow large and soft against the back wall. I should go home. I know I should go home. But I wanted to write this down first. I wanted to say it somewhere. My father loved this shop with everything he had, and then he gave it to me, and I loved it with everything I had. And now I am giving it back to itself, which is the only way I know how to describe what closing it feels like tonight. Not losing it, not failing it, just returning it, setting it down gently, the way you set down something precious that you have been carrying for a long time. Not throwing it away, just letting it rest, just accepting that it has lived its full life. And so has this chapter of mine. I am okay. I want you to know that. Whoever is reading this, wherever you are, I am okay. In fact, I am something better than okay. I am grateful. I am so grateful it almost takes my breath away. Sitting here in this lamplit room full of books and dust and my father's memory, I am grateful for every single day of it. All 20 years. All the years before that. Every creaking floorboard. Every customer. Every book pressed into a stranger's hands by my father before me. Every quiet afternoon. Every rainy Tuesday when no one came in. And I sat alone and read every conversation at over this counter with people I grew to love without ever knowing their last names. All of it. Every last bit of it. I would not trade a single day. Thank you, Arthur, for existing, for being there at the end of the night when there is no one else to say things to, for making a place where this kind of letter makes sense. With love. Mia. I sat with your letter for a long time before I felt ready to speak to it, because you wrote something in those pages that I think is one of the most quietly courageous things a person can say. You wrote that you were okay. You wrote it not as a performance, not to convince anyone including yourself, but as a real report from a real place inside you that you reached that night. Alone in the lamplight with your hand on your father's counter. You reached it honestly, and you reported it honestly. And that matters. That matters a great deal. I want to talk to you about what you did tonight. Not the practical thing, the locking up, and the packing, and the turning off of lights. The other thing, the thing underneath the practical thing. You sat in the middle of an ending, and you let yourself feel it fully, and what came up was not bitterness, and not denial, and not the frantic urge to find a way to keep it going past its natural end. What came up was tenderness. What came up was love, and I want to tell you that is not a small thing. That is, in fact, one of the most difficult and most rare things a person can manage, because most of us, when we are standing at the end of something that mattered, reach for the pain of it before we reach for the gratitude. It is natural to do that. The pain is closer to the surface. The gratitude lives deeper down, in a place that is harder to get to, especially in the moment of the ending itself, especially when you are tired and it is late, and the room around you is dim, and the boxes are half-packed, and the key is in your hand, but you got there. You sat on that stool in that lamp-lit room, and you ran your hand along your father's counter, and you got all the way down to gratitude. And I want you to hear me say this directly. That is not a small achievement. That is the work of a person who has loved something well enough, and long enough, and honestly enough, that they can let it go without needing to pretend it is not happening. That takes real courage. The quiet kind. the kind that does not announce itself, the kind that sits in the dim light of an old shop very late into the night and just feels what is real. Now I want to speak to everyone who is listening tonight who is carrying their own version of what Mia is carrying. And I know you are out there. I know because I have been doing this long enough to understand that Mia's letter is not really about a bookshop. It is about the universal experience of standing at the end of a chapter that mattered and not knowing how to let it go without feeling like you are failing it. Maybe for you, the closed door is a job you gave years of your life to, a job that shaped you and that you believed in. That is now finished, either because the world changed, or because you changed, or because both things happened at once, as they often do. Maybe it is a house, the home you raised your family in, that you are now leaving because the children are grown, and the rooms are too big, and the time has simply come. Maybe it is a relationship, not necessarily a painful ending, but a quiet one, the kind where two people simply arrive at the natural end of what they were to each other and have to find a way to close that door with love rather than resentment. Whatever your version of the bookshop is, whatever it is that you are standing outside of tonight with your hand on the key, I want to say something to you. Closing a door does not erase what was built inside it. That is the thing I most want you to hear tonight. Whatever you loved, whatever you built, whatever you gave your time and your care and your specific self to, the closing of that chapter does not reach back and hollow out what came before it. The years that Mia spent in that shop are not diminished, because the shop is now dark. The books her father pressed into strangers' hands, the quiet afternoons when no one came, and she sat and read, the conversations over the wooden counter with people whose last names she never knew. None of it is made smaller by the fact that the lamp is now off and the door is now locked. It happened. It was real. It was full and good and specific and loved, and the ending of it is simply the last sentence of a story that was always going to end somewhere, because all stories do, and that is not a flaw in the story. That is just what stories are. I want to talk about endings and what they actually mean, because I think we have learned to be afraid of them in a way that does not serve us. We have learned to treat endings as judgments, as verdicts, as the universe's way of saying that the thing was not enough, or that we were not enough, or that we should have found a way to keep it going past the point where it naturally wanted to stop. But that is not what an ending is. An ending, when it comes naturally, when it comes not from failure, but from completion, is simply the shape of a full life. A life that has been truly lived will have endings in it, many of them, because a life that has been truly lived is a life that committed to things, that loved things, that gave its time and attention and care to things that eventually, because everything eventually does, reach their natural conclusion. The endings are proof of the living. They are the evidence that you were here, and that you cared, and that something real happened because of you. Mia's shop did not fail. I want to say that plainly. A shop that serves a community for nearly 40 years, first in the hands of a father, and then in the hands of his daughter. That is not a failure. That is a triumph. That is exactly what a small, quiet, loved thing is supposed to be and do and become. It had its full life. It gave everything it had. And Mia gave everything she had to keeping it alive and real and present in the world for as long as the world needed it to be. and now is finished, and the finishing of it, tonight, in the quiet, with the lamp on, and the dust rising in the warm light, and her hand on her father's counter, is not a grief. It is a ceremony. It is the proper, dignified, loving conclusion of something that deserved a proper, dignified, loving conclusion. I also want to speak to something specific that Mia wrote, because I think it is important, and I do not want to move past it without addressing it directly. She wrote that she was afraid the closing of the shop would feel like losing her father a second time, that she was afraid it would reopen the grief of losing him, and she discovered that it did not. She discovered that sitting in that room in the dim light, in the last hours of the last night, she felt him present. She felt the room full of him, and I want to say something about that, because I think it is true. And I think it is one of the things that people do not talk about enough when they talk about grief. The places and the objects and the routines that belong to someone we love do not end their connection to that person when they end. The wooden counter does not stop holding her father's hands just because the shop is closing. The slight crookedness of the shelves does not stop being his particular, intentional, beloved crookedness. You cannot close a door on a person's presence. Their presence lives in you. It lives in the memory of the smell of a place. It lives in the grain of a counter you traced with your fingertip at 2 in the morning. It lives in a book on the third shelf from the bottom, third section on the left, that has been sitting in the same spot for decades waiting for the right person to finally take it home and read it. That presence goes where you go. It fits in a bag. It sleeps on a nightstand. It does not require 4 walls, in the least, to remain real. And so, Mia, I want to say this to you. You are not leaving him behind. You never were. You are taking him with you, the same way you always have, in everything you learned about how to love a quiet thing completely, and how to press the right book into the right hands, and how to find the meaning in the things that other people might just fix and move on from. He is in you. He has always been in you. The shop was the place where you could also be in him, in the space he built and loved. And that was a gift of 20 years, an extraordinary gift. But the closing of that space does not close the deeper thing. The deeper thing goes on. I want to say one more thing before we move into the quieter part of tonight, the part where we let the words slow down and the night do its work. I want to say it to everyone who is holding something right now that they know, deep down, has reached its natural end, but that they have not yet found the courage to let go of. I understand why you are holding on. I understand it completely. Letting go of something that mattered is one of the hardest things a person can do, because it requires trusting that what comes next is not nothing. It requires trusting that the closing of one chapter is not the end of the book, only the end of that particular story, and that there is still room on the page for what comes after. That trust is hard to find, especially at a late hour, especially when you are tired and the room is dim, and the thing you've been carrying is heavy and familiar and has been yours for a very long time. But here is what I want you to consider. What if letting go is not a loss, but a homecoming? That is the word Mia used. Homecoming. What if setting something down, gently and with love, is not abandonment, but completion? What if the very act of releasing something, of opening your hands and saying, "This was mine, and I loved it, and now I am choosing to let it go freely"? What if that act is itself a form of love? What if it is, in fact, the highest form of love, because you are not holding on out of fear. You are not clinging past the natural end out of the need to possess. You are simply loving something completely enough to let it be finished when it is finished. That is not failure. That is grace. You are allowed to close the door gently, with love, with the full knowledge of everything that lived behind it. You are allowed to turn the key and hear the bolt slide home and stand on the pavement for a moment with your hand still on that key, and then let go. You are allowed to walk home. You are allowed to carry the things that are yours to carry, the memories, the lessons, the specific knowledge of how to love a quiet thing completely, and to leave behind the things that are meant to stay. The shop, the counter, the slightly crooked shelves. They will hold what they hold, and you will hold what is yours. I want to take you to the last moment of Mia's night now. I want you to be there with her, in that small, dimly lit room at the corner of the old street, as she moves toward the very end of this long and beautiful evening, because I think it is the most important moment. Not the locking of the door, though that mattered. Not the sitting on the stool with her hand on the counter, though that mattered too. The most important moment is the one she is moving toward now, slowly, in no particular hurry, because there is nothing left to rush for. The most important moment is the last lamp. She stands up from the stool. Her legs are a little stiff from sitting so long. The shop is quiet around her, that very specific, very full quiet of a place that has held many people and many voices over many years, and remembers all of them even in their absence. She stands still for a moment and she just listens to it. The quiet, the full, warm, particular quiet of this room. Outside, the street is empty. The night has gone deep. There is a very faint sound of wind moving past the building, barely there, like the building is breathing. She can hear it only because everything else is so still. She picks up the letter she has just finished writing, folds it slowly, and tucks it safely into her coat pocket. She picks up her bag, the one with the book inside it, her father's book, the one from the third shelf. She holds the bag for a moment, and she does not move. She is not procrastinating. She is not avoiding the final thing. She is just taking one more breath of this air, one more breath of old paper and worn leather, and that other thing she never could name. She takes the breath all the way in, the way you take a breath when you want to keep something, when you want to carry it with you. She holds it for just a moment, and then she lets it out. She turns to the lamp, the old brass lamp on the counter, the one with the wobble in its base, is throwing its warm gold circle of light across the space that was her father's, and then was hers, and has been for so many years. Exactly what a small and quiet corner of the world can be when someone decides to love it completely. The light it gives is warm, amber, unhurried. It has been burning all evening, this lamp, the same way it burned on hundreds and thousands of evenings before this one. The same way it burned when her father stood behind the counter, and when she was a child sitting on the stool watching him work, and when she herself stood behind that counter and learned how to be the keeper of this quiet place. This lamp has seen it all, every year of it, every person who came in out of the cold and blinked in the warm light and felt, even if they could not say why, that they were somewhere safe. She reaches out her hand. Her fingers find the switch on the cord. The small round switch that she has clicked 1,000 times, 10,000 times, at the end of 10,000 evenings. Her fingers know it exactly, the exact size of it, the exact resistance of it before it gives. She holds it for a moment without clicking it. She looks at the light one last time. She looks at the warm gold of it on the counter surface, on the nearby spines of books, on the ceiling above, on the walls. She looks at the soft shadow it throws across the room, that good and gentle shadow that has always felt like the room settling in for the night, like the room breathing out. She looks at all of it for a long, slow, complete moment. And then she clicks the switch. The light goes out. The room goes dark. Not an empty dark. Not a cold dark. A warm, full, settled dark. The dark of a room that has been loved for a very long time. And that is resting now. The way all loved things eventually rest. The darkness settles over the shelves and the books and the counter and the stool and the slightly crooked walls like a blanket laid by careful hands, like the last thing before sleep, like the period at the end of a very long and very beautiful sentence. The darkness is soft. It is complete. It is right. Outside, the wind moves past the building again. That faint and barely there sound. Inside, there's nothing. Inside, there is only the quiet and the dark and the rows of books standing in their places, the half-packed boxes near the door, the counter that still holds the warmth of a hand that rested on it not long ago. The room is still. The room is at peace. The room has done everything it was ever asked to do, and has done all of it with patience and with love, and now it is resting, and the rest is earned, and the rest is good. Mia stands in the dark for a moment. She does not need to see. She knows this room without light. She's known it her whole life. She stands in the dark, and she feels the room around her, and she breathes, and she does not cry, not the way she expected to cry, not from loss, but her eyes are wet, and she lets them be wet, because the feeling behind the wetness is not grief. It is something that does not have a clean, simple name. It is gratitude, and love, and completion, and the particular bittersweet warmth of something that was real, and is now finished, was worth every single moment. She moves to the door, slowly. Her hand finds the handle. She opens it, and the night air comes in, cool and clean, carrying with it the faint smell of the street, and the distant sound of the city very far away, and the particular fresh quality that air as very late into the night, when most of the world has already gone inside. She steps over the threshold. She is outside now. The shop is behind her. She pulls the door closed, carefully, without letting it bang. It clicks shut with a soft and final sound. The sound of a door that has been opened and closed 10,000 times, and knows how to close gently, the way old doors do. The way things that have been used with love for a long time always know how to be gentle. She does not look back through the window. She does not need to. She has already seen it. She has already held every last detail of it in her eyes and in her hands. And in the full breath she took before she turned out the light. It is in her now. She carries it. She will always carry it. She walks down the street. Her footsteps are quiet on the pavement. The night is still around her. The old buildings lean toward each other at the tops on either side of the narrow alley. The sky above is dark and full of stars, but she notices perhaps for the first time in a long time, simply because she is not rushing, simply because there is nowhere she has to be right now except exactly where she is. She looks up at them as she walks. The stars do not rush. They are simply there, the same way they have always been there, doing what they have always done, quietly and without hurry, and without needing anyone to notice. But she notices tonight, and it feels like the right thing to notice. It feels like a kindness the sky is offering her. A small, quiet, perfect kindness at the end of a long and important night. Now I want you to follow her into the rest of the night. I want you to let your own body do what Mia's body is doing as she walks home under the stars, which is releasing, slowly and fully, and without drama, the last held tension of a very full day. I want you to feel that. I want you to feel in your own chest, your own shoulders, your own hands, what it is like to set something down and walk without it. Not forever, not abandoning it, just not carrying it tonight, just letting the night be the night, and letting your body be your body, and letting the hours ahead be quiet and dark and completely, entirely yours. Your shoulders are heavy. Let them be heavy. That is not a problem. That is the weight of a day that was real, a day that you lived in and moved through and carried yourself across from one end to the other. And now it is done, and the weight of it is settling. And you can let it settle without trying to hold yourself upright against it. Let your shoulders drop. Let your arms go loose at your sides. Let your hands rest wherever they are resting, and release whatever they have been gripping, even gently, even unconsciously, even the small invisible thing that hands grip when a person has been a little bit tense for a little bit too long. Your breathing has already begun to slow. I can feel it as I say this, even through the distance between us. That slow and particular evening out of the breath that happens when a body finally accepts that the day is over and the night is here, and there is nothing more that needs to be done. Your inhale is long and quiet. Your exhale is longer. There is a small, natural pause between them, a still point, a held moment that is not tension, but just the body's own rhythm finding itself again after the noise and the rushing and the demanding hours have fallen away. Stay in that rhythm. Trust it. Your body knows exactly what it is doing. The shop is dark now. The lamp is off. The books are resting in their rows. The counter is cool in the dark and smooth under no one's hand, and the slight crookedness of the shelves is still there, still intentional, still the specific and beautiful idea of a man who understood that things do not have to be perfectly straight to be exactly right. All of that is resting, and you can rest too. Think of the darkness of that shop as the darkness of your own room right now. That same warm, settled, earned darkness. The darkness of a place that has been loved today, even if the love was quiet and private, known only to you, even if no one else saw it. The room around you knows it. The night around you knows it, and I know it. Here in this quiet, because you are still awake at this hour, and the fact that you are still here, still listening, still willing to let a voice carry you gently towards sleep, tells me everything I need to know about the kind of person you are. You are the kind of person who is still paying attention when the day is done. You are the kind of person who knows that the quietest hours can carry the most important things. You are, in your own way, exactly like Mia. sitting in the dim light of your own late hour, with your hand resting on the things that matter, breathing in the particular air of a life that has been lived today with honesty and care. The night is very still now. There is only the quiet outside your window, that deep and particular quiet of the small hours, when even the last of the late night sounds have faded and the world is as close to silent as it ever gets. There is the warmth of your bed or your chair or wherever you have settled for this night. There is your own breathing, slow and even and perfectly paced, a rhythm that needs nothing from you except that you follow it, in and out, long and slow, the way the night breathes, the way old places breathe when they are resting in the dark. Let your eyes close if they have not already. There is nothing to see right now that is more important than the inside of your own rest. The stars are outside if you need them later. The stories are here if you need them later. Right now, there is only the dark and the quiet and the particular warmth of this specific night that is yours and no one else's. The end of a day that belonged only to you. The beginning of a sleep that is going to be good and deep and full of the kind of rest that only comes when you have truly, honestly, completely set something down. You have set it down, whatever you were carrying today, whatever the weight of it was, whatever name it had. You have set it down, gently, the way Mia set down the key, the way she stood in the dark for one last moment, and then turned and walked home under the stars, the way she looked up and saw them there, the same as always, patient and unhurried, and quietly going about the business of shining, which is all they were ever asked to do. You have set it down, and you are walking home now, through the quiet, through the good and settled dark, under your own particular sky. Sleep now, sleep deeply, and without reservation, and without the need to hold anything through the night. The things worth keeping will be there in the morning. They always are. They do not require you to stay awake guarding them. They rest while you rest. They wait while you sleep. And in the morning, if you choose to pick them back up, they will be there, warm from the keeping, solid from the loving, exactly as you left them. But that is morning. That is later. That is a different time entirely. This is now. This is the deep of the night. This is the quiet at the end of the long story of your day. And it is enough. More than enough. It is, in fact, exactly right. You are safe. You are held by the night the way the dark holds the books in that small and sleeping shop, gently, completely, without any need for light to make it real. The dark holds things just as well as the light does, maybe better. The dark lets them rest. Rest now, all the way, the whole of you, the tired parts, and the still thinking parts, and the parts that have been carrying something heavy without quite knowing it. Let all of it rest. Let the night be what it is, which is yours, which is safe, which is the kind and quiet end of one more day of being a person in the world, which is no small thing, which deserves this rest, which has always deserved this rest. I will be here tomorrow night. The lamp will be on. The door will be open. Come back whenever you need to. Come back when the day has been long and the quiet is what you need, and the late hour is the only hour that feels like your own. I will be here. I'm your friend, Arthur. You are safe. Good night.